Sexual activities are amazing, but if you go too far to fulfill your dark desires, it can be fatal and disturbing. Things don't always go like as wild and exotic as 50 Shades of Grey or 365 Days. Like in this case, two people wanted to explore all their desires in the most wild and adventurous ways, and that's why they started using drugs to get the 100% of themselves. The result? Lethal death of one of them. But the case is not simple. Why? What really happened to them? Let's find out in this video. This is Lisa Buchanan, an attractive and charming young woman whose free spirit and presence captivated everyone. Those bright blue eyes and a radiant smile made many hearts skip a beat. But there was a darker side to the story behind this charming girl of love, manipulation, and tragedy. Lisa had a relationship with Dr. Kulus, a very successful plastic surgeon. This relationship seemed picture-perfect at first glance. Christ, being competent and charismatic, appeared to Lisa's family as the ideal match for her. However, he ended up being toxic and controlling on the inside of their supposedly beautiful love. Christ introduced Lisa to drugs and infused substance abuse into their bond. Their times together mostly resulted in reckless indulgence, where the lines between affection and dependency blurred. And by July 4, 2005, the relationship had come to a breaking point. That weekend, while others celebrated with picnics and fireworks, Lisa and Christ secluded themselves in her Franklin, Tennessee apartment. What came next was a frightening fall into a drug-fueled nightmare. That day, Christ kept injecting Lisa with a mix of crushed oxycodone, a powerful and highly addictive drug that can feel euphoric. But it's incredibly dangerous when misused like this. The drugs overpowered her body, and she eventually fainted, her breathing slowing down to a stop. Christ testified he performed CPR and called 911, reporting Lisa had stopped breathing. But by the time the paramedics arrived, he told them a completely misleading account of how Lisa had fallen ill. The drug use naturally was kept secret, which ultimately prevented Lisa from seeking further medical help. Lisa was rushed to the hospital, but an investigation revealed a grim reality. In Lisa's apartment, authorities found prescription drugs, syringes containing oxycodone residue, and other things that indicated their drug-fueled relationship. Evidence was manipulative. Evidence showed how Christ manipulated his medical education to obtain drugs and administer them. His actions were fueling Lisa's addiction and ultimately led to her death. Although Christ claimed innocence, stating he loved Lisa and had nothing to do with her drug use, the evidence spoke otherwise. Lisa's family, including her sister Tara and mother Peggy, saw right through him. They mourned a daughter and sister who had been drawn into a dangerous and destructive relationship, blinded by Christ's charm and the allure of what he seemed to offer. Though from the outside the relationship between Lisa and Christ was perfect, it was also complicated and controlled. Christ did many free cosmetic surgeries for Lisa, such as breast augmentation, eyelid surgery, liposuction, and Botox. He also helped her financially, which she needed to pursue acting and modeling careers. But neither of them could gain momentum. She wanted to appear on television when she was very young and to be heard. She auditioned for different parts and even was a part of a children's puppet show. Still, success evaded her professionally, making her feel that way. After that, Lisa's private life became just as stormy. Her divorce had left her uncertain about herself, but she got one positive aspect of her life: her daughter, Jessie. Jessie said she was close and trusted her, so it would not be easy to find the right words for them. Initially, Jessie was optimistic when her mother met Christ, as their life appeared to improve materially. They moved into a larger home with plenty of amenities, but her enthusiasm faded as she got to know him. Jessie found Christ's behavior deeply unsettling, noting how he would constantly call Lisa, obsessively monitoring her every move in a controlling and invasive manner. Toward the end, Lisa seemed determined to leave him for good, but Christ still managed to maintain his grip on her life. He isolated her from her support network and repeatedly accused her of being unfaithful. This manipulation went further than emotional, as Lisa's health began to decline. Her family began to suspect that Christ had made her believe that she was ill and that only he could treat her. Christ had a grip on Lisa, wherein he would inspire both fear and reassurance to the same effect. Jessie, recalling a childhood memory, said she vividly remembered seeing Christ inject her mother with an unknown substance, and Lisa fainted after that. Despite Jessie's protests and attempts to reach her mother, Christ kept her away. Investigators later concluded that Christ had introduced Lisa to drug use, framing it as a means to enhance their intimacy. Lisa's family, however, insisted she was not a habitual drug user and believed she only took substances under Christ's direction. But Dr. Christ Kulus argued that he knew Lisa Buchanan well and claimed she suffered from an addiction to drugs. He said that Lisa hid her drug use by injecting herself in the groin area. According to detectives, though, it was all fiction. After 5 months of investigation, Kulus was arrested and charged with murder, allegedly selling and giving Lisa the drugs that killed her. An autopsy showed Lisa died of an oxycodone overdose. Police found used syringes with crushed pills mixed into a liquid slush in her apartment. Prosecutors argued they had been injected into her at least 3 times over the weekend. Only one mostly intact oxycodone pill was found, however, and detectives discovered an unused 18-gauge needle in Kulus's travel bag, identical to the type used in the injections. This, prosecutors argued, was damning evidence that Kulus was directly involved in her drug administration. But again, Kulus denied the charges, insisting on his innocence as he faced simple assault charges all the way to second-degree murder. The worst scenario he would face in case of a conviction was 25 years in prison. The prosecution, according to Kim Helper, presented enough evidence that indicated Kulus indeed injected the oxycodone mixture into Buchanan's body. On the other hand, defense attorney Lee Ovman presented an argument where there was no solid evidence against Kulus. According to him, the facts did not prove the crime committed. Detectives also introduced a short video cassette that was discovered in Buchanan's apartment as part of their circumstantial case. The footage reportedly captured explicit sexual acts from the weekend, which prosecutors said strengthened their case that Kulus was involved in her drug use and subsequent death. The taped segment recording Lisa's final hours is critical evidence in the investigation into her death. It is disturbingly graphic, with moments showing Lisa barely conscious at times. This conservative southern city requires jurors to view the 2-hour recording in court, a chilling experience heightened by the tape's intimate nature. It was never intended to be seen by anyone other than Lisa and her husband. Attorneys for Kulus maintain that the tape shows Lisa to be a willing participant, asserting it harms her far more than their client does. Prosecutors counter that Kulus drugged Lisa to dominate and control her, claiming there are syringes on the carpet visible on the video and recent fresh injection sites on Lisa's body. Prosecutors claim that in the video, Lisa is seen holding gauze to her groin, possibly to hide evidence of a drug injection procedure. Kulus counters these accusations, asserting that Lisa injected herself and that the footage does not conclusively prove otherwise. He is heard instructing her to apply pressure to the injection site, which prosecutors argue demonstrates his awareness of the drugs and their use. However, Kulus denies all these. Dr. Bruce Levy, Tennessee's chief state medical examiner, contradicts Kulus's defense when he claims that the precise and linear pattern of the injections prove that it was done by a professional and not Lisa herself. Levy underlines the dangerous nature of such injections for someone impaired by drugs and, therefore, declares Kulus responsible. Finally, the defense calls Kulus to testify, believing his testimony is crucial to countering the increasing allegations against him. During the trial, Kulus described his efforts to get Lisa to stop abusing drugs, recounting her promises to quit and her repeated cycles of stopping and starting. Despite the danger she posed, he confessed to staying with her out of love and a desire to make her happy, even as he turned a blind eye to her self-destructive behavior. He admitted that he felt he could do nothing to prevent her drug use. According to him, she was intent on getting high despite his objections. Prosecuting lawyer Kim Helper reviewed his acts during the weekend in question and concentrated on the aspect of having had sexual intercourse with Lisa at a time when it was clear that she was in a daze. Kulus confessed that Lisa was not sober and was drugged. He had complained of the symptoms of a heart attack, which included severe headaches, shoulder and chest pain, left arm pain, and heart palpitations. With all these warnings, Kulus continued to favor his desires, as he admitted in questioning. Prosecution claimed that Kulus's behavior that weekend was not an isolated one, but part of a troubling pattern. They detailed the facts of an event in Kentucky back in 2002, during which Kulus, suffering financially and personally, was hooked on Demerol. He admitted using his surgical office prescription to inject himself and his girlfriend, Lisa, whenever she asked. Acknowledging his poor decisions, he sought rehab, but Lisa stayed behind, and her condition worsened quickly. Lisa's mother, Peggy, remembered the time she found her daughter in a dire state, surrounded by syringes, bottles, and bloodstains. Lisa was incoherent, her body covered in severe injection sores. Police described injuries in this case, specifically to her hands, arms, groin, and feet, with many infected injection sites. Her limbs were twice as large as a normal size because of swelling. Lisa also had been subjected to force injections by Kulus several times, being dragged around the room. Lisa also previously provided a handwritten letter from Dr. Kulus, in which he admitted to getting her hooked on painkillers and supplying them to her, acknowledging that she had no prior history of drug abuse before their relationship. However, this letter was not enough to secure a conviction. According to Lisa's family, Kulus intimidated her into silence, convincing Lisa that she would never see her daughter again and that the authorities were lying to her. Lisa's family did not understand why she kept sticking with Kulus, who harmed her. Considering all these, the prosecution maintained that these previous acts revealed a dangerous pattern of behavior, that Kulus had continually put his desires over Lisa's welfare, ultimately contributing to her tragic death. Kui pleaded guilty to one of 20 drug charges, and instead of seeing prison time, received probation. He returned to practice medicine shortly after. In court, Kulus confessed that he had initiated Lisa to illegal drug use, but said that he regretted what he had done. But then the Lisa Buchanan murder case in Franklin, Tennessee, has taken a new turn as defense attorneys for Christ Kulus try to discredit the theory of a drug overdose by prosecutors. It takes a completely new angle. The defense argues that Lisa's death was not caused by a typical overdose of oxycodone, but by the buildup of filler material used in the pills. This filler, when crushed and injected over time, is said to clog the blood vessels in the lungs, ultimately causing a fatal heart attack. This would imply that the filling process, followed by crushing of pills and then injection of filler, led to gradual accumulation in the lungs and, over a period of months or years, could have been sufficient to cause Lisa's heart to stop. He underlines that such death is normally the result of long-term drug abuse and not a single overdose that may have been the case with Lisa's injection of crushed pills. The prosecution, however, presents a more complex theory of the case. They argue that Lisa's death was a result of the filler material combined with the narcotic oxycodone. They argue that though the filler blocked her lungs, it was the oxycodone that depressed her breathing, leading to her death. According to the prosecution, the evidence points clearly to the defendant's involvement, suggesting that the defendant played a direct role in the fatal overdose. One of the key arguments presented by the defense during this trial is mishandling of evidence and poor police work. Defense lawyers argue that detectives failed to securely close the crime scene at Lisa's apartment. They claimed that important evidence, like bottles containing medicine, was not noticed and discovered inside a hospital where it was destroyed. Detective Anderson, however, responded by saying the apartment was safe, with all its locks changed and access cut off. In his opinion, the only chance this evidence could be tampered was if the defense had managed to get into the apartment. While facing this counter, the defense argues that it has no immediate evidence that leads to Christ Kulus as the one who killed Lisa. They argue that since there is no solid evidence, the jury should decide the person is not guilty. Otherwise, Dr. Kulus, an extremely bright plastic surgeon who came into medical at age 19, now might very well be sent to jail for the next 25 years of his life. He worked and played so hard that he little enjoyed his young years. In terms of immaturity, was something that could actually catch up on him. His involvement with Lisa Buchanan landed him here. Those close to him describe him as someone who never fully grew beyond a stage of extended adolescence, which may have contributed to the tragic events that followed. Dr. Kulus asserts that he is not fully responsible. He said that Lisa would have died in any case whether he was there or not. The trial was long and dragged out as the jury took nearly 2 weeks to reach a verdict. The prosecution relied mainly on circumstantial evidence and found it difficult to present a clear case. The most controversial evidence was, as we said, that explicit SX video, which prosecutor Kim Helper felt compelled to present, as it seemed crucial to the case. This was one of the photographs that this particular jury saw many times during their deliberation. After deliberating for not more than a day, the jury came with a verdict that shocked Lisa's family. Dr. Kulus was strangely acquitted of charges of second-degree murder and reckless homicide, but guilty of a charge of criminally negligent homicide. This conviction meant a much lighter sentence for Dr. Kulus than anybody expected. Lisa's family, however, was knocked to pieces, especially her daughter Jessie, who was unable to even walk out of the courtroom as she wept uncontrollably. Dr. Kulus stated that he accepted the verdict, though he expressed regret that the tragedy of Lisa's death ever occurred. The case left everyone involved grappling with the consequences of the actions that led to the untimely death of Lisa Buchanan. But why did they consider him not guilty of murder? The jurors accepted that there was not enough hard evidence to prove Kulus to be a murderer. Though most of the jurors believed that Kulus must have administered the fatal injection, they could not prove it conclusively. There was no physical evidence, most importantly, no photograph of him giving the injection, that definitively proved his role. The judge handed down a 2-year prison sentence to Kulus, the highest sentence possible under the charge, which many expected he would get only to serve in less than half of that time. In contrast, after sentencing, Kulus was granted the chance to stay at home on a $500,000 bond while his defense attorney appealed the judgment. Thus, the certainty of whether or when Kulus would end up behind bars remains undefined. For Jessie, a daughter of Lisa Buchanan, the sentence wasn't easy at all to digest. She even reached out, writing a personal letter to Kulus. "Christ, I've been thinking about this letter for months. It's consumed me. What do I say to the man who took my mom away? It's been a long 2 years, and I still tell myself she's coming back. You know you're responsible for her death. When you think of me and my family, try to imagine what we've been through and how much we miss her." And now, over 5 years after the death of Lisa, and when his appeal was still pending, suddenly it took another surprising turn. Christ Kulus was found dead at a friend's apartment. Toxicology reports confirmed his cause of death as bronchial pneumonia due to opiate intoxication, which pointed to a drug overdose again. Kulus's attorney, David Rabin, argued that his duty to his client extended beyond his death, and with the appeal still unresolved, he successfully had Kulus's conviction overturned by the state's Court of Criminal Appeals. But the Attorney General's office refused to let go of the case, arguing that Kulus's case was hardly over yet. In defense, Rabin declared that enough is enough, insisting that the case be closed to allow Kulus to finally rest in peace. So the battles in court didn't help. Kulus also never served 1 day of his sentence. But following the case, Lisa's family could find no satisfaction nor closure over the loss. They said they didn't feel anger, vengeance, or hate, but instead realized the inevitability of their situation. They accepted that life presented them with a difficult hand, and they were left with no choice but to move forward. That sounds tragic, disappointing, and how helpless we are, isn't it? What do you think? Do you think Kulus was the ultimate guilty or a murderer? Or do you think, considering everything, it was hard for anyone to pin all the blame on him, and Lisa's death was a tragic accident? Share your views in the comments, and if you want to see some more breathtaking true crime stories of America, just watch this, where a vibrant, beautiful woman just vanished into thin air one morning, and when the authorities failed to find her, her friends became the Facebook detective in search of her. Subscribe to the channel for more. See you soon.